Hey everybody, Josh the RV Nerd here from Bish's RV down at Jayco today, getting a little bit of a kind of behind the scenes look. We're going to be taking a factory tour down the production line where they make a lot of their Class C's and sort of B plus like Melbourne sort of things. We're going to get to see them all the way from raw chassis all the way down to final finished product and a little bit of everything in between. Now, quick housekeeping note, I always talk too much, we'll see if I can make it quick. To get you up close and personal, get inside and outside the rigs like this during production, I kind of have to come when production has halted at the end of the day. These folks get in here at like 5 o'clock, they leave at about 1:30, then they tend to go home and like run their farms or have a second business and whatnot, because about 60% of this workforce is Amish. That's the other reason I come here when there's not a lot of folks around. Typically, Amish people don't like to have their face captured on camera or recorded without their consent, and in a wild factory environment, it's very difficult for me to go through and get a whole bunch of consent forms. So I appreciate that Jayco let us come down here after hours, kept the lights on for us today, and if you like getting to see behind the scenes on things like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I'm going to try to keep more factory tours like this coming out regularly, and frankly, let me know what you'd like to see next. And who knows, maybe that'll help me know which direction I have to go. Now, what's tricky about this is when the chassis on these first come in from Ford, mostly, since we're mostly looking at Class A's today, but from whoever, they actually go through a bit of an upfit process before they really make it in here into the production facility. And it's some of those upfits for ride, handling, and safety that I want to focus on first. So most of what we're looking at today are actually going to be Greyhawks, but Redhawks are also made in here. You're going to get to see several of the Melbourne models made here as well, or Melbourne as it's called, you know, from Australia. So we're looking at that E450 chassis, but some of the upfits that go on these I want to show you. They have to do what's called stretching the chassis. Like right here, you can see where there's a joint. So this is like original factory chassis. This is what's been added over here. And there's two levels of upfits. There's acceptable and there's preferred. Now, Jayco's not necessarily the only one doing a preferred upfit. I don't have a list for you that I can list out at this specific point in time. But what kind of things are you getting here on the preferred upfit? Well, there's 5 or 6 significant things, like these rubberized isolation mounts right here, and they hate it when I call those hockey pucks. But it's kind of like a hockey puck, to explain it in layman's terms. It's a big chunk of rubber. What that's going to do is a lot of that road chatter when you're going down the road, it's going to soak that up before it vibrates your floor, which then vibrates your walls, which vibrates your cabinets and your roof, and so on. You get the idea. So those little rubberized isolation mounts, as they prefer I refer to them, those are really doing a good job of not just keeping it quieter in the RV when you're going down the road, because that's a main difference between a motorized RV versus a towable, is you're in it and you're occupying it and you're hearing it. It keeps things quiet, but it also helps keep your cabinetry from rattling apart, which is awful nice. Right here, we're looking at another upfit option, the Hellwig Helper Spring. That is this extra spring right here. And what that is doing, let me get you back here, and if you're motion sensitive, I want to give you a warning now. I'm about to tilt the camera somewhat severely. What those are going to help do is when you're like going around sharp corners or there's heavy winds, it will help prevent the RV from, you know, body rolling side to side like that. And if you're motion sensitive, go ahead and look back now, it's safe. Again, appreciate my viewers. Don't ever want to give anybody discomfort watching something here. Now, Greyhawks have hydraulic leveling. That is an available option on Redhawks, but thankfully they are always prepped for it. But some of those extra upfit things in the preferred upfit that I'm talking about, like if you look in here, they add an extra little diamond gusset on the inside of that stretched chassis, some extra little details like that. And here is a very interesting thing. I recently learned how they actually have tighter chassis tolerances when this is upfitted as compared to Ford from the factory. Check this out. All right, so when this chassis comes in raw, virgin from Ford, from, you know, front to rear, opposite corner, from corner to corner, they have a tolerance of a 1/4 inch off square is still okay and within tolerances, and everything will work out just fine, according to Ford's standards. When it goes through the upfit process, they actually tighten that. They say it has to be within at least 1/8 of an inch corner to corner square. Otherwise, things start not fitting properly. They start squeaking and creaking more. You start having issues. Things stress differently, and then they pop later after the thing's been built. So that's one of the things I think is really cool about this preferred upfit, is it actually has tighter quality controls and parameters as compared to even the original Ford factory chassis. I thought that was pretty cool. Now, from where she begins, when she comes in over here, take a look at the dashboard on that one. And over the next couple stages, what you see is a lot of that, I'm going to call it like veins and arteries start to be run, where you start to see things like some propane lines run, the beginnings of some electrical systems are run here, you know, propane, hydraulic systems like that. You see some of the extra electronics in say something like a Greyhawk Prestige getting added up there. There's extra little details that start coming into place before you really put the foundation on the floor over there and put that all away. But one of the big things with motorhomes is also towing. Something I've always really liked on the Jaycos, and it used to be exclusive. I don't believe this is exclusive just to Jayco Class Cs anymore, since some Ford chassis changeovers the last couple years. But they have a 7,500 pound tow rating with 750 pound vertical hitch limit. There are manufacturers out there who say, well, we have an 8,800 pound, but only if you use an external weight distribution system, and some Class Cs still have only a 5,000 pound tow rating. One of the major differences here, because you're like, well, they're on an E450 chassis, what's different? It's how they choose to hook everything together. Jayco runs their hitch bolts sideways instead of screwing into the bottom of something. When you screw in from under, the thread, the strength of that screw in the thread is the only thing determining how strong and how long that can hold. When you screw it in sideways, you're also gaining the benefit of the strength of that steel beam right there, which is kind of cool. Now, you also see when I said veins and arteries, you're starting to see some of their electrical harnesses. They basically pre-bundle all these wires and they harness them all together. And what I like about this is, God forbid you ever have a problem, electrical short or something somewhere, it allows us as dealerships, or potentially you as an owner, to just get a replacement harness, go, unplug, replug in the new one, and get yourself up and running versus spending well over $100 per hour tech time getting those things sorted out. Folks, I don't know if you've ever tried to track down electrical issues. It's a nightmare. That is a big deal. Now our flooring starts coming in, and this is a major discussion point right here. Because when you hear a lot of Jaycos, or when you're talking a lot of towable stuff, which this channel has historically mostly been known for, you hear me talk plywood, 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 plywood's a fantastic material, but the thing is, there are different materials are better in different applications. Because if you look at this, you see that, yes, this is a structure wood floor deck right here, a fancy term for OSB. And you're looking at saying, is that more of like a 3/8 than a 5/8? And the answer is yes. The reason being, this is all laminated together. Because again, the difference in the usage of a motorized RV instead of a towable RV. A motorized RV, you are in it when you're going down the road. This doesn't have loose edges that are going to shift, wiggle, squeak, and creak, moan, and groan. This is silent, basically. This is going to be a lot quieter, because when you're in that cab, or when you're in the house of the RV, as you will, you don't want that thing basically being deafening, like like there's an earthquake going on inside it. You want that to be as quiet as possible, because you're actually, when you turn the key, you're camping in one of these, versus with a towable RV, your trip doesn't really start until you get there, back in, set down the leveling jacks, open the slides, and then you're camping. With these, it's a road trip, baby! And stuff like this, sliding in between these things, I'd never be able to do this during working hours. I'd get straight squashed by some Amish dude that could flat out level me, because, he's built like a brick and I'm a chubby guy. Anyway, what are we looking at over here? These are ABS little cargo bays, effectively, a molded plastic. Some of the things like a Redhawk, it's a little less money to go with a more like metallic kind of cargo bay. And it is still very rugged, it's very strong, but it's a little more likely to be dented. Whereas these ABS things, you can just chuck bricks in them and they're not going to get dented up. They're going to keep looking good long term. Now you also see where they're beginning to do some things. It's kind of funny when you see these. You almost think like, a house. You see the sticks and the skeleton go up, and then you see the plumber and the electrician come after that. Well, in most RV production, whether it's towable or motorized, it's almost the exact opposite that happens. You build the foundation, and then you actually almost build the guts inside, and then you wrap it in a candy-coated shell. What I wanted to show you, though, I wanted to be able to walk like between a couple of these and notice, like, even though you would never see these once the RV was built, notice how you're still looking at like all plywood gusseting. Notice how when we get back here, let me see if I can find a good example. Okay, like right here, look at this countertop. You see how it's also sealed on the back side here. It's all these extra little things that, now, a lot of other manufacturers might do this, but there may be some that don't. And that is like, there's no other way you're ever going to be able to get there to see that. That's the extra stuff that I like to see you. And in fact, looking through here with my Superman X-ray vision, there's something under that bathroom platform I really want to show you, because I think that's a huge unsung area. They do a lot of good work. Actually, I tend to do some of my best work in the bathroom, if I do say so myself. Though my wife and kid might disagree. Okay, so shower pan, right? I mean, we've all seen those 100 times. You never really see what's under it a whole lot. This platform, this lift right here, this is like RVIA, this is like plumbing code. They have to have this lifted up here for some specific plumbing reasons, but it also gives them an opportunity to run some other things. What I wanted to show you is, again, a couple specific things here, that it's all plywood, that you have very consistent, platform construction as a result, but there's also like this full inch of high density block foam under there so that you don't have like an inconsistent spot within your shower. Ooh, hey, okay, that's, I guess I have literally left my mark in that one. Again, this is a production facility, it gets awful dusty in here. But when you step in this, it feels solid, it feels the same everywhere you step. So you don't have that like, okay, step here, don't step there. You don't get that like, squishy, moonwalky soft spot on your floor. And in case you're wondering like, well, wait a minute, where did like all these kitchen cabinets and shower walls and partitions and all that come from? This is mezzanine style construction. It's very common in the RV industry, but it seriously maximizes production because effectively they have a factory above a factory. So what we're looking at right here is they preload this little slide with like all of the interior cabinets and walls and partitions and sinks and everything else that the next unit's going to need. And you can see how they're all pre-staged up there. A lot of that stuff is assembled up in that area. We're going to get a look up in one of those lofts in just a minute, just to kind of give you an idea of, that stuff comes down. The guy's standing over here. He starts setting the stuff on the floor. And then by the next station, they start putting the walls in place. Well, not the walls, but you know what I mean. But speaking of walls, that is the next major visual thing that we actually see happen over here. And this is one of those things that I really like people to see on these, because Jayco does a very awesome thing where they don't just put like a small little candy coated cap on the front of their RVs. It is a full entire sleeve over nose cap. And I'm glad that I had an opportunity to show you some of these walls so that you got to see that. It is a full sidewall. It does extend all the way up to the nose of the cab. It's just an entire cap that sleeves over that. The trick is, while the line is not running, I don't have a good way of showing you that cap going on, because what's crazy is the cap being installed alone. That full sleeve over cap takes about 30 minutes, which in a fast-paced factory environment like this is an agonizingly slow amount of time. That's why not every manufacturer does it. That sleeve over, cab over, nose cap, we're gonna get some examples of it in a little bit. It does an amazing job of preventing wind buckling. It does an amazing job of keeping the water out because it moves all the seams from an area of high stress and concern to low stress and concern. But I've actually had customers call and say, well, I talked to a rep at a show and they said, yeah, but if that cap flies off in the wind, there's nothing else structurally supporting the front of your RV. Folks, I don't know who came up with that nonsense, but that's a snake oil salesman. That is simply not true. And this is what happens when they leave me in these places, unescorted and unmonitored. I run into things and I gouge my hand up. Lawsuit! And again, I apologize that I couldn't show you one of those caps going on in real time. I'm also not going to be able to show you a roof being set and, secured. But I did have a cool opportunity here with this cap staged up for tomorrow to give you a little bit more detail on it. So again, a one-piece full sleeve over fiberglass cap. And you notice again, instead of having seams in the front corners of the cap, it pulls those seams down under, you know, just above where you're driving, you know what I mean? Because this would be your forward overhead bed in most RVs. The other thing here, it doesn't look like much, but it's a major structural thing. You see these extra little fiberglass woven blankets and patches, how they're applied right there. That is extra structure where it needs to prevent that thing from buckling internally from a wicked headwind. And it's actually really crazy because you're looking at it like, so it's just an extra little piece of fiberglass blanket. When you laminate and glue that stuff together and you bond it, it becomes like concrete. It's crazy. It stops going anywhere. Now behind me here, I have one of two different styles of roofing that they do in this facility right here. This is a laminated roof that you're going to find on your Greyhawk, Greyhawk Prestige, Melbourne Prestige, whereas a Redhawk or a standard Melbourne will not have a laminated roof. It'll have one of the, what Jayco likes to call their Magnum Truss roof. It does have a, I think their skin is Dicor, but a non-fiberglass skin roof. There's a couple benefits both ways. At the end of the day, what it kind of boils down to is this is a more expensive and a little quieter thing, so you tend to find it on a little bit fancier, a little bit more expensive products. Let me give you a couple of the benefits of fiberglass versus rubberized roofing actually real quick. So again, like a laminated floor, the benefit here for a motorized application is silence. It keeps everything far, far quieter when you are rumbling down the road. Now, you know, their Magnum Truss roof system, I don't think is terrible. This is definitely quieter though, but you're paying a little bit more of a premium for that. Now, they all have the same seals. It drives me crazy when someone says, oh, this is a more maintenance-free roof. That just absolutely drives me bonkers because you have the same seals around the same fixtures regardless of the actual composition of the roof. But what I feel about this, even though the R values are roughly equivalent, I've always felt that these heat and cool far more effectively and evenly because I've used this illustration before. If you think of like a tiny thin little coffee cup with scalding hot water or coffee in your hand, you barely feel it. Now, imagine you've got anywhere from a 2-inch to, I don't know, I'm eyeballing it, 3.5-inch coffee cup above your head and do the math. You know, it's going to do an extremely good job of keeping, you know, the heat or the air, or whatever you're looking for in the RV the way that you want it. One of the things that is a little bit different though is when you have a laminated roof, they actually have to carve out the air conditioning channels into that, you know, block foam structure. So the one thing I want you to understand about that is when you're walking on it, sometimes there's a spot that feels a little bit different. And there's nothing wrong with that. What you're doing, you're just feeling with your feet the area where you're basically standing on top of one of your air conditioning ducts. My recommendation, don't walk there. Now we're actually getting a really cool sneak peek. At the time of this filming, this is a prototype model. I think they debuted one at Tampa, the very first one. They're making a couple changes here, but they've run a couple prototypes of a new Melbourne Prestige floor plan, and I can tell it's a Melbourne Prestige for two reasons. The silver sidewall skin is a different type of fiberglass, a Laminlux 4000. That doesn't mean anything to you, but basically it bonds better to the paint packages. We've got a flickering light above us. Apologies to anyone who's light sensitive. The other thing is it has a fiberglass roof, so I know that's a Prestige, and the nose cap's a little bit different. And like I said, in this factory, at this facility, you'll actually see how we're going to change back to Class C's in a minute here, and then again back to Melbourne's later. They make a couple different series of their motorhomes in this one facility. So if you're shopping Melbourne's, Redhawks, or Greyhawks, pretty much everything is built effectively the same way. It's just a little bit different chassis, a little bit different floor plan. Let me, I don't know if I'm supposed to do this, but there's no one around here to stop me. I'm gonna just peek inside this thing and show you, because I think this is an absolute dynamite floor plan. It's something I've seen from like leisure travel, and I'm really glad to see somebody else pick it up. Okay, so Melbourne's a smaller style rig. And when you want to start having space for like a living room, a bedroom, and a dining space all at the same time, things get awful tricky. That's where I think this floor plan is really, really great. Because sort of like the idea of a Murphy bed travel trailer, when you are, you know, living in it during the day, you don't really need a bedroom. So they allow that space to be dual purpose. Now there's no lights on in here, so I'm just kind of running lights off my camera. Apologies if everything's dim. And remember, this is very much in a rough draft state in the middle of a production line. This is not something that was ever intended to be shown before. But I tell you what I am liking, with this being that Prestige series, that extra lift that you get in here really opens this living room up. That is awful nice. So we're standing basically at the cab area right now, which is why the entertainment's effectively built into the kitchen, because the seats will swivel around. So your driving cab kind of becomes like a set of living room seats as you go. Now, working our way back through here, we're actually walking through the bathroom. I'm not going to get into that too much because this is a, more of a factory tour, but I had this sneak peek section. This is a rear bedroom or Murphy bed lounge. So you can kind of use the front as like living or dining or kitchen. You can use the back like a bedroom or a living space. And where this is really nice is when you're stuck inside on a rainy day. This will be awesome. Now, I know I haven't given you an amazing look at this, but leave me some feedback and let me know, what do you think of this just conceptually right here? Let's get back to our tour. Now, you might notice there's a huge gap in the production line right here. That's because these are a couple prototypes that we got that sneak peek of. When they run those, they run them slow. It really slows everything else down. But you notice they don't just like batch run 20 of them like it's a production run, and then if there's problems, they say, well, 20 of them got out with a problem. They're building these to find those hiccups. They're kind of figuring certain things out as they go. And then you notice we're jumping right back into Greyhawks here. I think this is, well, what is this, like a 30Z? 30Z, I think, maybe? Somebody help me out on the model of this. So we've got a rear bed slide. Then we've basically got like a full wall mega slide over here. Dining and kitchen. Then you see the partition. That's half the bathroom that you walk through. And then the headboard of the bed all in one big mega slide down there. Somebody tell me what model this is. Now, what I want to show you, this is a very cool, at the time of this filming, mid-year update. They are now adding into their forward-facing bench seats car seat anchors, something they had not done before. That I'm really glad to see that, because camping is RVing, as it were, because when you say camping and campers on motorhomes, some people tend to get weird about it. But anyway, it's such a family event. And if you had a baby, there wasn't always an easy, safe way to transport your child. You know, that's just, man, that's a heart attack. But they're also putting in seatbelt mounts for rear-facing seatbelts. They're not required to do that. And when you have seatbelts in anything motorized, you suddenly have to have some very serious safety checks proven and tested. Those things have to withstand 1,000 pounds, I believe, for a minute, pull testing. And Jayco likes to always exceed those requirements by at least 10% if they can. Now, over here, anywhere in this structure that they're screwing into it, by the way, any of the aluminum structure in the rig they have to screw into, they do stuff that with wood to keep that from crimping. That's not necessarily uncommon. I just like you to know that they are doing it. Now, from here, you can't really see a lot happening outside because not a lot's happening outside. At this point, there's a lot of things like wiring being run. There's work going on inside the rigs, but station by station, you don't really see a lot of that. But you notice how there's a ton of stations here. They run their RVs side by side. They can have more individual stop stations where they can have more employees doing fewer tasks per employee, which gives you a little bit better completion record when they have, a more specific set of duties every day, which is why sometimes when you talk to other dealers watching this, perhaps, if you talk to somebody who works at a factory, they sometimes come to your dealership to see a final product because they only get to see it at like station 2. You know what I mean? So that's where we were on the ground over there. But just to give you a bit of the bird's eye view up here, again, we're looking at Greyhawk, so they have that fiberglass roofing. Again, while they're running some wiring and whatnot, they're getting to the stage where they can start installing appliances. And you might notice, you're looking at some with 2 airs, some with 1 air. When you have 1 air like that, it's going to be a 15,000 BTU 30 amp service. When you have 2 airs as an option, you go to twin 13.5s, still 30 amp service. They have a basically like a soft start on those and a power management system that I think operates very, very cool, because what it's going to do is allow you to keep cool without ever really realizing all the stuff that's happening behind the scenes in your RV. But here's what's going on. So you used to see dual airs on a lot of things like this in the past, But the problem was what they were doing is they were cheating. And they would cycle compressors. They'd run the front air, then they'd run the back air, but they weren't actually running both airs at the same time. You couldn't tell because they were still running both fans, but you weren't getting extra cooling. By the way, is this a little bit creepy that like only half of my face is like lit up? I look like, you know, John Travolta there on the Face Off literature. There we go. Let's light that sucker up. Just blind yo at the glare off my forehead. Anyway, so what's happening here is they're using, again, soft start airs. That will allow both airs to start up. But what's really cool about this, they still use a power management system, but it's not cycling the compressors unless it's an absolute last resort. So let's say you want to do something like use the microwave, or you want to fire up a coffee maker or a blow dryer or something like that that sucks some huge juice off this thing. Your RV's power system will first look to see if something like the refrigerator or the water heater are running off electricity. Since those two objects can also run off propane, they will kill the electrical side first and auto start the propane side to free up the juice that you need to run your coffee maker, blow dryer, what have you. Now, if it's a really high draw appliance, or you're trying to run a couple things and you're like, you don't realize two people are really sucking a lot of juice out of this thing at the same time, as a last resort, it will drop the compressor of one of the air conditioners and keep an eye on the power coming in until it can resume power to that air conditioner. Now, all of that happens without you ever knowing it, but it's cool that it happens at 30 amp service. And that, man, that frees up so many additional campsites that you can go to. And when campground congestion is an issue and you don't always have a 50 amp site to run both your airs, that's a big deal. And one last thing, as long as we're up here, all Greyhawks actually now come with a 190 watt Gopower solar package. I do believe you could double that. You could add an extra panel if you want to, since that's a 30 amp controller. But what's kind of cool about this is they basically run it two ways. One, yes, it's charging your house batteries, but it does also offer a trickle charge to your chassis battery. So if you haven't been using the rig for a while, as long as it's been sitting somewhere that it's in the sun, you should have battery and it should start. And frankly, low power and exhausting battery supplies is the #1 cause of like almost every electrical issue in the entirety of the RV industry. And there's a really good look at that nose cap, that seam moving from an area of high stress to low stress, because you're just not getting heavy wind buffeting and blasting in there. Now we're kind of hitting the point where they're putting on some exterior final trims. You can see where they're putting in windows, and if I go down just a couple more stations, you can see they're getting to the point where they've done enough on the inside, like loading up appliances, running wiring and whatnot, that they're installing the slide boxes here. But if you look between these Indiana Jones corridor things, there's yet another one of those upper deck mezzanine shelves that are prepping stuff that go inside the rigs. I want to get you up there and again give you that look behind the scenes a little bit, because I thought that area was pretty cool. But on the way, I discovered something. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be over here. You ever hear like the whole Amish Mafia? Well, frankly, if they catch you slacking off inside this place, what they do is they mount you over here in the ejector seat. They throw you face first right into the side of a Melbourne. You don't want to be that guy. Also, apparently I have an egg hatching in Pokemon Go right now. More on that at 5, Ann. So back upstairs, that's down where we were over there when we saw that slide box get installed. We are basically 2/3, 3/4 the way down the production line. And what's wild is this is actually where the cabinet shop starts. This is where all the individual pieces come in, all stacked up like that right there, coming in from their, basically on-campus milling shop where everything is pre-staged. It comes in here, and then the final assemblies for each individual floor plan are put together. It is so big, it goes all the way down back there to above where those floors came on, and then wraps around and drops the cabinets down. That's how big this is. This facility actually was recently very greatly expanded to be able to accommodate, again, additional stations, additional production, more staff, which I think is very cool. But this big chalkboard looking thing over here is kind of where a lot of it begins, because they pocket screw all their cabinetry. Let me actually see if I can fiddle with a couple things here. Let me grab a couple pieces of this. Now, I ain't gonna actually screw anything together, but let's say, you've got a cabinet stile and rail. Well, you want those things to be close together. Now, if a guy is taking a staple gun and he just goes pop, well, when I did that, did you see there was a little moment where it kind of gapped a little bit? So you want all that gappiness out of there. You want a clean fit and finish. And I'm probably not supposed to mess with this, but what this is going to do right here, right there, that is going to just grab the cabinetry and keep it square and in place while the worker is able to pocket screw everything to give it a nice clean fit and finish. Just a neat little detail on how that all comes together. I'm sure it's okay that I messed with that. So you're going to have all these different individual stations making different, chunks of the different cabinetry that goes into those preset loads that we talked about that slide down that big shelf off the mezzanine. What's interesting here is, Jayco's been around for so long, people have worked here for so long, there's like sometimes 2 or 3 generations of the same family working within the same facility. You'll have the young kids doing things like, going in to get screws or nuts, bolts or something staged for, say, like dad or an uncle who might be down on the production line. That is extremely physically intensive work down there in that main floor. I ain't gonna lie, I probably wouldn't be able to cut it. No, just being real with you here, Up here, though, this is where you need a little bit greater level of craftsmanship and skill on those fine detail things. So what you tend to find up here is, say, like older dad, uncle, grandpa, something like that, who maybe his knees aren't for climbing up and down anymore, but he's got the eye and the skill and experience to handle those more fine detail kind of things. Now, there was something, you remember that dinette back that right over there, hold on. So this is some of that pre-staging I was telling you about. It took me a minute to figure this out, but these are the backs of the dinettes. This is the structure of the dinette. And that is one of those things that I've personally always kind of used to help gauge kind of the quality and the caliber of an RV manufacturer's. I actually grab the back of the dinette bench and I try to just muscle that thing. Now, my chicken arms ain't gonna do any real damage, but if my chicken arms can bend that sucker pretty good, it ain't really all that solid now, is it? I'm never able to do that on Jayco's, and now I am seeing why. This looks like 2 things. That is all one thing. Micro laminated plywood forming your dinette back. Now, what I can tell you is that is the dinette bench that faces forward because it has those new car seat mounts, and this is the dinette bench seat that faces backwards because it lacks those things. Again, this is the kind of, it's just, maybe this isn't interesting to you. I think it's really cool getting to see, like, this is the stuff that goes into that final product that I sit there and play Monopoly at with my kid, before I try to flip the table because she cheated. Funny thing is, she never cheats, but I always end up being banker for whatever reason. And the last time we played Monopoly, I had like $2,000 and I bought a property for like $200. Then I looked down and I was broke. I think because I paid, I split $200 off of my stack of bills. I think I put $1,800 in the bank and I only kept $200 of it. And yeah, I lost that game. So I flipped that table, baby. Boom. Maximum load limit right here, 4,000 pounds. Ooh, really starting to regret that pandemic poundage right now. Then meanwhile, down at ground level, just got scared by my own reflection. What I was getting at is, meanwhile, back down at ground level, we're seeing some final exterior finish items come on. The last of our, wiring stuff, windows, tail lights going in, final baggage doors. But you notice, you might see a couple things like this. There's always active quality controls going on down the line. So my guess is they spotted a little scuff right here that they didn't really like, that they're going to get addressed before this thing gets out there and gets released to the public. And I tell you what, I had a heck of a time finding one that wasn't parked so close together that I could get into it. But again, we're, mid-production process here. You can see things like the cabinet doors, the struts, the appliances are getting installed. They are actively checking things like the propane lines at this stage. And I have a question for you folks watching this. They currently have, gas electric two-way refrigerators in these. Would you be interested at all in the idea of a 12-volt fridge option in something like this? I'd be kind of curious to know, what you think. Say like a Redhawk or a Greyhawk. I know that in the towable industry, those have become very popular, especially in the Midwest where I'm from. I know down south they're awful darn popular. I know out west they're a little less popular because a lot of boondocking people like to have that propane side. But on a motorhome like this, where you've got, you know, solar built in from the factory, generator from the factory, some things like that. Does it make sense? I don't know. I'm kind of asking you guys. And once again, this must be built with that dual 13.5 air system with the auto changeover, or not auto changeover, I'm so sorry, with the power management system to keep that air running. And remember, even though we're going from, you know, Greyhawk to Melbourne here, coming down the same line, the same processes hold true. They are, at this stage, on the inside of the RV, they're doing things like, you know, that stovetop that was open because they're doing gas drop testing right there. They're getting that button back up. On the exterior, you can see how they're getting decals put on now. And actually, you got a really good, like, that's only half done because the other half of it is done over here at this station. And on the inside of the RV at this stage is where they're going through, you know, Windexing it down, cleaning it down, doing that little spot clean. Now, interestingly, once they reach this point, this is the end of the slide down production line, they actually back their way down here for a couple final fit and finish checks. You see the electrical wires hanging down. They start testing everything on 110 that needs tested, so that if anything needs addressed before it again gets shipped out to a dealer and then handed off to you, they're getting all those things you know, checked proactively. Now, I'll never say that any manufacturer is without sin, and that is why I always encourage you to shop your dealership as much as you shop your RV. And I get that it doesn't look pretty behind me right now, but one of the things that I do like about this is you see things like this in a lot of your Jayco facilities. Those are basically recycling collection points. Jayco recycles a ton of like wood, styrofoam, all of their styrofoam actually, but they are 98% landfill free. They did have a goal at one point to be 100% landfill free and just haven't been able to get there. But from where they were to what they're doing now, like the water that they use to test the RVs actually is recycled into the building, and that's the water that they use in their restrooms, you know? Makes tons of sense. So they're very understanding of the fact that without a good environment, you ain't got a place to take an RV, and they're doing the best that they can as they go through here to try to make sure that they're not making a major negative impact. I appreciate that. I've been through different factories. I don't always see that. And the very last station before they run it out the door, one last time, basically somebody just flips the battery disconnect, powers it up, and says, can I make everything work? They open and close all the drawers and cabinets, try to make sure the catches are working properly. Even, look at this. There is like one of those big bubble mirrors on top just to see if they can see anything really wacky and irregular up there. That's kind of cool. I wouldn't have thought of done something like that. But, you know, you kind of saw it in the construction phase before. This is after they've gone through and they've given it just a quick little, I'm not going to call it a detail, because even after we at a dealership still go through and clean stuff, there's always a little bit of particulate that always finds its way through. But what I'm noticing here, there's a drawer hanging out. So they must have found, okay, we need to fix this little drawer glide before it goes. But again, they're checking individual drawers and things like that. They're making sure every light lights up. They're making sure that there's, you know, antifreeze in the lines, which actually is a pretty cool thing I think Jayco does. A lot of manufacturers, once it's cold season in the Midwest, well, not, that sounded like flu season. When it's chilly outside, I go and get a bowl. But when it's freezing temperatures, a lot of manufacturers will just use air to blow out the lines, and there's nothing wrong with that. Jayco actually winterizes, I believe, every unit all year long, because what if it doesn't sell before the snowflakes fly? They want this unit to be protected, and if you buy this over the winter, they don't want you to find out that you had a blown water line that they could have prevented. It's I always call Jayco the death of 1,000 paper cuts. It's a bunch of individual little things they do like that. And notice that when this is being, because these do have to get, you know, driven to a dealership, they keep the plastic on the driver's chair so that, you know, you're not sitting, I don't know, maybe that guy rubbed his pants on something before he got into your motorhome. You don't have to deal with it. So there you have it, everybody. From first chassis to final finish and final product, that's how they come together. I almost kind of feel like saying next week on how it's made. But actually, question for you. You got to see these things, and if you appreciate what we're doing for you, by the way, make sure you hit the like button on our video and subscribe, or at least leave me a little comment that goes, hey, thanks, nerd. I don't take offense to that, by the way. I call myself that because, frankly, it's kind of true. It's like I was trying to tell somebody the other day, you know, if you don't enjoy watching Star Wars, instead, watch it again. You know? But anyway, like I said, genuine nerd. But where should I go next? If you like these factory tours, when I get a chance to break away from the dealership, when I'm not traveled around from store to store, where should I go? Let me know, and I'll do my best to try to fill in that one. Till next time, though, take care, stay safe, have fun. Best wishes from Bishes, everyone.